Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of Tony's Technical Support here, talking about building our computer, of course. We're now going to get into some of the more intricate parts of actually putting your computer together. I've decided to still use the same old dead motherboard here just as our example, this way I don't damage anything. Again, as I showed you in the previous episode, with Intel motherboards, they use a small CPU, which actually clamps in. With these clamps, of course, you just have to unlock the little retention mechanism there. You just push it down and pull it out, and it will pop open. Once you've done that, which I'm now having a great deal of difficulty doing, there we go, you can open up the door, take your processor, and you'll see that there's two small little indents there. You just want to match those up to your processor, and of course drop your CPU in, close the door, and use that same clamp by gently pushing down just to secure it in place. Now, I thought in this episode I'd talk a little bit about your heatsink and fan combination and how to install it. I've got a couple different ones here. Most of these are more basic models. This one, of course, has had the fan removed. As you can tell, most heatsinks are nothing more than a block of aluminum. This one's meant for an AMD processor and would normally have a small fan on top, of course, to push the air through. This one, on the other hand, is actually designed for an Intel processor. Now, this one's going to look a lot weirder compared to the other one. The other one, of course, is a big block of metal. This one, however, looks a little more stylish, I guess is the better term. You'll be able to see on the side here that it's actually stacked up this way as opposed to being sideways. On the bottom, this is the part that comes in contact with your processor. And you'll notice there's a couple little funny pipes coming out here. Well, these pipes actually contain a material that helps to take the heat from your processor at the bottom here, spread it up through the pipes, which go up this way, and then use the fins here in order to dissipate the heat. Now, of course, in order to make this a little better at dissipating the heat, it did have a fan on it, which I'm now going to clip back on here, just for the sake of showing it to you. As I get it on here. There we go. Of course, when doing this, please remember, watch your fingers. Most of these fins are a little on the sharp side. Now, with Intel processors, their heatsink installation is a little different. You'll notice there's four little pegs, once I put that wire out, there we go, at the bottom. What you want to do is, of course, first of all, read the instructions. However, most instructions for Intel boards are the same. They have these little clips here. You'll be able to see the black. Actually, there's a good example right there. That you pull upwards. And basically all it is these little pegs, the white piece here, you would line up with the holes in your motherboard, and you want to insert them through. Once you've got them all lined up here, which this will take me a second, I apologize. And by the way, you do want to do this before you put the motherboard in your case. Makes it a lot easier. There we go. Once they're all in place, these little black pegs here, you push down, you'll hear them click. I don't know how well my microphone is there. Move this up a little closer. Gotta turn that one. There we go. There we go. One more. And that actually helps to clamp the processor on. Now, one thing I forgot to show you, so I'm going to remove this. Again, these processor heatsinks are nice. You just turn the little screws and they pop off again. This is about thermal paste. The processor, of course, when you look at it, is not perfectly flat. Neither is the bottom of your heatsink. This one actually is a little worn down. It's been through the ringer a couple of times. What you want to do is you want to put something called thermal paste on there, also referred to as thermal interface material. I'm going to open up my handy dandy little toolkit here. Thermal interface material normally comes in these cute little syringes. Now, these are not drugs, by the way. Be nice, Mom. And they're just basically a paste, very similar to caulking, non-conductive. In order to apply this stuff, there's a couple of different methods people have said. One is to stick a little glob on, use a razor to spread it out. Another one, which I tend to prefer, you take your processor, and again, I'm doing this a little incorrectly because you should be laying this flat, but this way is easier for you to see. I think this camera's still going here. There we go. Take your little syringe here. And you want to put a little daub right in the center. And I'm just going to squeeze a little wee bit out. By little daub here, I mean roughly about the size of green pea. So there we go. You see there? Just use the tip of the syringe. Kind of spread it out just a little wee bit there. Of course, I always wipe off the excess. I don't like to waste any. When you're done with your thermal paste, because they always give you more than enough for one application, it's usually enough for like 6 in one of these little tubes, if not more. Put the cap back on, put it back in your toolbox. The reason why I say a little daub in the center is when we stick that heatsink on there and clamp it down, that's actually going to apply a lot of pressure on that goop, well, whatever you want to call it, and it's actually going to cause it to spread out. And the idea of thermal interface material is basically to fill in the gaps between your processor and your heatsink and make them one solid item. That way the heat is transferred better from your processor up to that plate, out, and of course your fan will dissipate it. Now when installing your heatsink on your computer, I'm going to show you this one more time here, you want to, of course, want to think of the way that the fan is going to be blowing. This one here actually takes and pulls the air in this way and exhausts it out the back. So in this case, when I'm building a computer using this board, I want to actually have it exhausting out that vent at the back of your case. So motherboard again, there's your back panel outputs. I want to pop it on this way. This will take me a second here because of course my hands are not exactly adept at doing this one-handed. You just clamp that heatsink back on there. And again right there. Some of these heatsinks are a little more difficult to get on, be forewarned. Some force is required. Do not pull out your hammer though. That is way too much. Again, I'm just going to clip it down here. Make sure that these are all in. And double check all these locks. And there we go. Once you've installed your heatsink and fan, you actually want to make sure, of course, your fan is connected. Now there's always a little white connector at the end. Most fans these days are 4-pin. If you have a 4-pin on your motherboard, you can still use a 4-pin. If you have a 4-pin, you can still use a 3. They're keyed. They'll actually only fit in one specific way. Clamp it in there. So there we've got the first part of building your computer system, which is, of course, installing your heatsink and fan. I'll get into the second little part in a second. Again, I got to keep these videos somewhat short so that they'll actually fit up on YouTube. I don't want to keep them 10 minutes long or anything like that, so I'm trying to keep them under 5. So next up, I'll show you how to install the RAM, and then I'll show you how to mount one of these in your case and a couple little simple tricks. Hopefully. Anywho, see you in a couple minutes.